Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'd like just to start tonight with a big thank you for everyone offering your ongoing donations and support. So, from my heart to yours, thank you. Just a couple of quick announcements. If you have a question during the Zoom session, please use the raise your hand function so I can see you. I'd be happy to talk with you. Or you can leave a question in the chat. And if you want to email me a question, just don't do it last minute. It's good if you do it an hour before or anytime throughout the week. And I kind of collect those. If you email me during the satsang, I just won't see it. So, anyways, one of the things I wanted to speak tonight about is the holy conversion of Paul. From the Bible, and I know I've spoken about this before, but recently I've been just studying some of the writings of the work of Richard Rohr, and he was speaking about Paul, and I just thought I'd share what I've been enjoying. One of the beautiful things that I love about Paul is that he was someone who was persecuting Christians. And so he was kind of, say, the bad guy in the new Christian world. And so if you all don't know the story, Paul, his original name was Saul, and he was a Jewish fella, and basically he was a learned man, a studied man, and one of his jobs uh, was to go out and to wrangle up these this new form of Judaism called Christianity. They actually called it the Way in the beginning. It wasn't called Christianity in the beginning, but there was a sect of Jews who had followed the teachings of Jesus, and Saul's job was to go out and basically to put them in jail, to have them hanged, stoned to death, or whatever their punishment was. And so in a sense he was he was guilty of attributing to the murder of many of the first followers of the way of what became modern day Christianity. And he was walking along the road to Damascus, as the story goes, and he saw Jesus. Jesus appeared before him and said, "Saul, why do you persecute me? Why do you persecute me?" Now, at that time, Jesus had already died and was resurrected and had gone to heaven. But he used this word, "Why do you persecute me?" And it really points out the non-dual nature of Christianity. That through persecuting one of Jesus's brothers or sisters on the path, that Saul was, in a sense, persecuting, Christ, who is this heavenly form showing up to Saul. And in that moment, Paul, he was just kind of struck, just stopped in his path, and he experienced a non-dual awakening. He spent 3 days where he couldn't really speak or eat or act. In a sense, they said he became blind temporarily. And then he dedicated his life to serving, Jesus' message, that basically we are the sons and daughters of God, that the kingdom of heaven is here upon the earth. And so, Paul had the conversion experience. He awoke to the truth. And please don't in any way think of this in terms of, say, religious ideology. He had awakened an awakening of the non-dual sort. And so in the past, again, he was someone who was kind of like a fundamentalist. He was similar to, say, the modern day Taliban, where he was a young man and he was excited about enforcing the rules of the fundamentalist tradition. Excited to go out and round up people who were, quote unquote sinners. He was excited to make people pay and prosecute them who weren't following the rules and the rituals of the tradition. But through Paul's conversion, he let go of all that ideology, from his Jewish faith and the rules, the regulations. And he realized that his direct experience was the most important thing. His direct connection to God, to truth, to reality. And he even went forward teaching from this place as someone who is standing in his own power, his own authority. Now, at that time, let's say, for example, if he was a Christian or claimed himself as a Christian, the people who had the authority at that moment in time were, say, the apostles, the 12 disciples. But Paul said, no, I have seen God. I have had this awakening. He spent some time in silence. He went to Arabia for a period of time, had a long retreat, and settled into this direct experience of truth. And then, eventually he met, some of the disciples, some of the apostles who were, in theory, the leaders of the beginning Christian movement. But see, when you see the truth, when you know the truth, when you've had a true conversion, there's something within you that just wants to live it, to serve it. One of the things that Richard Rohr spoke about, which I love, that he said, after conversion, you do not look out at reality. You look out through reality, as reality. So it's reality seeing reality. Reality seeing reality. I just love this. You look at life from the perspective of reality. It's not that you look out and see reality. That can be one level of awakening. But a deeper level is you look out at life through reality, as reality. So it's God seeing God. Richard Rohr goes on to say, this wonderful audio book that I was listening to, about referring to Paul. I am a character from within a story that has already been written. I'm a character on a stage. I'm being used and led. So after the conversion, you realize your life no longer belongs to you. You belong to reality. You've always belonged. We've always belonged to reality. A really soft way of saying that is that you're a child of God. Of course, we're born into this world, and the world has a stage and has characters and all that kind of silliness. But you realize you're a child of God in this story, in this play called Maya. And of course, your job is to say yes to the truth. Yes to the truth. And when you've been converted, when you've awakened, it is as if the first time in your life you've been fully legitimatized, fully validated for what you are. For what you are. And the hilarious thing, the beautiful thing about God choosing Paul, Paul is the bad guy. He's the one who's not supposed to wake up. He's the one living this very cruel and inhumane life. I mean, he was basically a hunter of men and women, sending them to trial, sending them to death, like feeding them to lions, in a sense. And that's the glory here of God showing up and choosing the unlikely ones. The unlikely ones. And it can be inspirational to see when you look at your life and you see that uh, you've been guilty of sin. Keep in mind, when I use the word sin, I mean to miss the mark. You've fallen short of your highest nature. When I look at my life, I look back, I'm like, oh my Lord, I did so many things wrong and bad and upside down and backwards and caused so much pain and suffering. And, you know, in Buddhism, they talk about the precepts. I think I've broken every precept. And you look at the Ten Commandments, I've certainly broken all the Ten Commandments. And the beautiful thing is that God gives us this opportunity to wake up, that God chooses us, the ones who are not perfect. Not perfect, Taylor. The ones who are not perfect. Not perfect. So anyone who's of one is the one kind of set up on the Enneagram. Perfection tends to be a thing. So any of us who demand perfection, expect perfection of ourselves, it is not a requirement. And that's the beautiful thing about the story of Paul, is God shows that you don't have to be perfect. You can be guilty of great sin. You can be a spiritual failure. Failure. I certainly was. You can be terrible at meditation. You can not be good at yoga. You can not know how to pronounce the beautiful Sanskrit terminology, the yogic tradition. I laugh because I've been given a Tibetan Buddhist name. I can't even pronounce it. I can't even pronounce my name in Tibetan Buddhism. And so you don't have to have the rules down, the rituals down. God is calling forth and just looking to you and asking you, what do you want? Do you want to be awake and see life through the lens of reality? Or do you want to keep, believing in the story of your ego? And for some of us, we have to exhaust our ego. And I don't mean that as a judgment or a reason for you to be foolish, an excuse to be foolish. Some of us, if we have issues with anger, we have to work it out. We have to exhaust it. Some of us have to exhaust our sadness. Some of us have to exhaust our desire mind and just run into that wall a couple more times before we realize, oh, this is a wall. It is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Some of us have to chase the ego. The ego's dream, which is, fantasy, which is always just a little bit around the corner. I love about the ego. It's always saying, oh, yeah, the truth is just right around the corner. What you want, happiness, it's right around the corner. And just keeps hooking you in. You keep walking around all the corners like a dog chasing its tail. But as you begin to wake up, you see, oh no, God is here now. The truth is here now, in me, in this one, in this one. And when I first woke up, my life was the biggest mess it's ever been. It was when I was the biggest mess I ever was. It wasn't that I was meditating really good. my life was the biggest mess it ever was. It ever was. And so I thought I'd just share that story because I was just really touched when I was listening to Father Richard Rohr speak and just telling the story of the least likely person on planet Earth, to come into Christ consciousness, the least likely one, woke up. And how beautiful is that? Our ego has this transactional idea for a good little boy or girl, good individual on the path that leads to us waking up. But that's transactional. God has an intelligence that's far greater than our transactional minds. And so, anyways, I just thought I'd share that. Like I said, I was touched and just reminded uh, by this ancient teaching. I just love the way that the Christ consciousness can show up in our lives. So, anyways, um, looks like our good friend Richard has a question. Let me see if I can press all the right buttons. Are you there, Richard? Okay, let me see. If you can unmute yourself, maybe I'll unmute you.
Perfect. Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. Great. Hi there. Um, hi everyone. Good to see you. Good to be here. I have a question that I think, Craig, is a rather tall order, so I will let you take it kind of wherever you see fit. Um, but I'm back to the masters, um, and what I would like to ask is for the primary masters that this lineage works with, or that you work with. I would love for you to call them in and give them a brief description, right? So I'd love to have the experiential kind of essence of feeling them come in. And then I would love to have like just a brief description of how this lineage understands that master. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah.
That makes sense. Um, Yeah, so I'll say this. If anyone uh, would like to join us more experientially, Wednesday night is a wonderful time for this experience. And normally the way it works is they come to me. And so they come to me. Now Richard here has opened the door for us. I had a little bit of a different idea, just getting through all the questions and this and that. But there's a sincerity there in Richard. Um, and so let me see if I can speak a little bit about it. See, when I open that door, I have to be careful too because my mind goes really blank. And so it's part of being open and receptive to anything greater than yourself. The training is you have to give yourself permission to go blank. I could just describe the different masters, but then I'm doing it through memory, and that's different, say, than like we've been speaking. The experience of conversion is the direct experience. And so, like I was saying a moment ago, if you come um, Wednesday nights, if the masters come to me, or one of them, I just call them forward. I call them forward. So the first one I might start with is Jaya Skanda. So often I call Jaya Skanda through the mantra, Skanda's mantra. And so it is Om Jaya Jaya Mahavira Bhagavan Sri Skanda Namo Namaha. So it's Om Jaya Jaya Mahavira Bhagavan Sri Skandaji Namo Namaha. And so if you're sensitive, you may notice just some heat. Because Skanda basically is the general of light. The general of light. He's like one of the generals of the gods. And so he's very powerful, Skanda. Skanda comes, riding on Jyoti Shakti, which of course is just more light. And so, um, and so again, when I feel into Skanda, I just go blank and I get really hot. A lot of light comes into the room, a lot of heat. And so, you may be noticing something, you may not, but it all depends on if you're open and you're receptive. If you're open and receptive. And of course, if you have what I'll call a particular wiring for this, say for this tradition, a particular wiring. So Jaya Skanda, Jaya Jyoti, Jyoti Shakti. And so Skanda is one of those forces. If you don't like the word gods, I just like to think of forces. Forces like powers, In the Bible, they speak about Jesus being, the right hand of the Father. So if you can just think of God having lots of hands, Skanda is one of the big hands. One of the big hands makes things happen. It can bring tremendous light. heat, brilliance to the situation. And of course, I have to be a little careful here because if I call on skanda first, skanda tends to just overpower my experience. And so, maybe next I'll call forward Hilda, Hilda G, Hilda G, Hilda G, Hilda G, Hilda Lazuma G. And so with Hilda, as I call her into the room, again, I still feel the presence of skanda. Hilda has like a sweeter flow and a sweeter presence, a gentleness about her, tenderness, and boy, about brings tears to my eyes when I just think of Hilda. Once my teacher David was offering a retreat, and uh, on the retreats he would bring out, on certain nights, Hilda's sari, her sari that she wore, and he'd drape it around a chair, like a chair that she would sit in, and one night afterwards, I used to be, David's right hand. So he had me clean up everything. So as I was folding it, I was overwhelmed with love and just tenderness from Hilda. And she's interesting because she's so tender and sweet. Yet also Hilda, she lived just like right on the edge of the absolute. She just had to be careful from not diving fully in, because then she would no longer exist here on planet Earth. So she was tender, but so brilliant, so brilliant. And of course, Skanda first showed up with Hilda. So Hilda G, we call you into our lives. We ask you to show yourself to us, to speak to us this moment, this evening, in our dreams, to guide us, act through us. We welcome you. We welcome your support, Hilda G, into our lives. And even now, as I call upon her, I can even just feel personally. There was Hilda and then David, and I just, I feel a little tinge of it's like I've let my lineage down because the beings before me were so great. And so I feel quite small in comparison. And that's okay. And so it's okay to be humble. This is one of the ways we keep the door open to these great forces is through humility. I've said this before often that, sometimes if we're a really strong, independent Buddhist, we don't let any of this in. And, it's like, why not? Yeah, life here on planet Earth is hard. It's difficult. It's messy. It's confusing. I don't know about you, but I need all the help I can get. So I'll call forth Skanda. I'll call forth Hilda G. Invite her to come into my heart. Give me the strength to live with integrity. And so I feel, this sweetness with her, and yet a power that's burning up some of the darkness within me. And so I'm feeling a blessing from her. Blessing from her. And then maybe just the next one I'll call forth, of course, is the Divine Mother. Just calling her forward. And so just paying particular attention to your crown chakra, and just inviting this descent of grace. And so when you feel into the Divine Mother, who of course is connected to Sri Aurobindo, often it comes with just just dare I say a crushing power, crushing power. And so it kind of takes my breath away when I call upon the Divine Mother, and she can show up, in different forms, but just right now as I invite the Divine Mother to come forward, sometimes I'll just reach up, and just invite this presence to come down into our bodies, into our form. And if you notice the crown, just getting really full of light, and then the third eye, you feel like a light that's burning, that's ridiculously intense. Like it's burning up karma within you. It's transmuting the nature of the mind, the nature of your consciousness. And so, for any of you who this is weird or strange or bizarre, this is a skill. It's a skill of being open, of being receptive. Like we can be receptive to our favorite podcaster, on the internet. We can be receptive to the great masters. If any of you, show up at a retreat or a satsang, you may notice, like say if you went from watching TV and then just showed up in a satsang like this or some other satsang, you may notice just all of a sudden this light is there. Feels really different than watching, what was someone telling me about? The Desperate Housewives of wherever, Las Vegas or something. It feels really different. And again, it's, the question of, for me, it was just a question of like, what is my life about? You can plug into so many things. What is your life about? What is your life about? So another way we can invoke the masters, of course, so there's opening your crown, calling upon them, praying to them, developing a relationship with them. But another way is, if you have a picture of a great master, you just stare into their eyes and you open yourselves to them. You open yourselves to them. So in Tibetan Buddhism, they have all these practices where you stare at a mandala or, an image of, green Tara or, some great Dakini or whatever it is. And you're invoking them, you're meditating upon them. You're developing a relationship. Now, I'll say something a little silly. I had a friend and a student, and he had a big heart, and he wanted to be in relationship with a woman, but he wouldn't talk to any girls. So it doesn't work that way. You can't be in relationship. Like can't get a girlfriend if you're not going to talk to any girls. And so prayer is a similar thing. If you want a relationship with God, if you want a relationship with Christ, you call upon Christ. You call upon Christ. You call upon these great masters and you open your heart. And the trick is with prayer or with doing, this type of work, you don't do it from your thinking mind. That's the mistake almost everyone makes. They pray to God with their rational thinking mind. And so they're busy being a doubting Thomas the whole time. That's no way. If you're going to fall in love, you have to believe that love is possible. You have to believe that it's possible. And my teacher, David, he used to say, well, just, put it out there, see, like an experiment. A true scientist is open first. They're not rational first, they're open first. And they witness, because, rationality is just an overlay, it's a bias. And so we called forth Jayaskanda, we called forth Hilda Lazumaji, and we called forth the Divine Mother. And see, right away, with just calling forth those three, as you can tell just from difference from how I started tonight, I feel really lit up, with this grace, with this light. And the beautiful thing about when you call upon these forces, they start to take root in you if you call upon them repeatedly. And then Skanda's strength becomes your strength. The Divine Mother's strength becomes your strength. And Hilda's love becomes your love. And see, that's the non-dual nature of calling upon a great master. People would go and visit Ramana Maharshi. If you go to Ramana Ashram in Tiru in India, you just you look into Ramana's eyes, like a picture of him, and there's just such a sweet innocence and tenderness. It's also eternal. It has the opportunity to awaken you. To awaken you. If you go up the road a little bit of ways, to Nityananda's ashram. That's another, great master used to come to Hilda. So Nityanandaji, Satguru, Maharaj. And so when I call upon Nityanandaji, Satguru Maharaj, he's a little bit like a wild man. he's a little wild. He used to go swimming with the like with the alligators or whatever big reptiles were in India. You jump in, to the swamp, and he was just a crazy man, a wild man. Nityanandaji, Satguru Maharaj. He comes with a wild power, a wild power. So once Indian tax collector came to visit Nityanandaji, Nityananda took him out to the swamp and said, I've got your money. I've got the money you're looking for. He jumped in the swamp with alligators or crocodiles or whatever it was. And he just pulled out piles and piles of just wet, dripping rupees to give to the Indian tax collector. And, so he had the cities. He just had, as I mentioned, this wild power, like the energy of what we call in some of the Native American tradition, like the coyote energy. Nityanandaji. Once Hilda was in the New York City subway, and as she got off, her train, and she was being followed by a gang of guys, and they came up to her to mug her. And she just boomed from her heart. Nityanandaji, Satguru Maharaj. They all ran like crazy. They were going to steal her purse, and they all just took off running as soon as she said that. They were just terrified by the presence that came forward. And so, there's all these great stories. A student of my teacher David and Hilda's, I think I've told this story before, was a prison guard at one of the like penitentiaries in New York. and there was a prison riot. And so this fella, he realized he was, going to get, really beat up by all the prisoners. And he started just chanting as loud as he could the Skanda mantra. The riot just completely stopped. Prisoners, the troublemakers turned pale. They didn't know what was going on. It just stopped, quelled the whole thing. And so you can play with this. You can play with these forces and just see what comes. See what comes. And you'll find that, perhaps one or two or all, you'll have a special connection with, a special connection. And to pay attention, that the thing that I like is just to open the door and repeatedly open the door, and then just wait and see what happens, what comes in your life. See what comes. Let them come to you. Let them teach you. There's so much more to this world than we could ever imagine. So much more. There's so many different realms of existence and being. It's quite arrogant, um, us human beings. We think we're at the top of the food chain and that we know everything. I'm going to talk about something a little silly now. It may seem silly, but recently I've always been a little bit of a UFO nut. And this will be a great transition because everyone will think I'm just totally crazy tonight. Uh, there's a new documentary out. It's like at the top of the Apple list, and I think it's called The Phenomenon. And basically this fella, I think his name is James Fox. Uh, he goes around and interviews all these government officials, generals, astronauts, uh, like the people who are in charge of nuclear missiles and this and that, and collected all these stories from these people of great integrity, about alien UFO visitation. And the thing that I liked about this documentary is just it had so much integrity to it. It was really clear. It didn't have any nuts in it or anything. It was just people who were really grounded, solid. I mean, um, military personnel and fighter pilots and this and that. And it was interesting to watch all of them be humbled, because these, were mostly men who thought, okay, we're in charge of the nukes, we're in charge of the ending of life here on planet Earth, we're at the top of the food chain. And they were giving these reports of, UFOs flying over the missile silos and making the nukes inoperable, which I think is so beautiful. And if you look at, again, I'm not asking you to believe any of this, but really credible men, and they're speaking about this. But and congressmen, are speaking about it too, and people part of the Defense Department. Again, none of them were nuts, but just this idea that humans have, that we're the best, we're at the top. As part of what non-dual awakening does, is it wakes you up and you realize, oh, there's more to life than meets the eyes. More to life. There's more realms, more possibility, more worlds. And human beings, we have this collective idea that if another species were going to come to us, that they would come here to invade us, to destroy us, to eat us. That's a fun one. There's been countless, say Hollywood movies about this. And again, I'm just pointing out like the nature of the mind, like these collective beliefs, how human beings think. Survival of the fittest, me against you. Democrat versus Republican. you know, US versus Russia or China or whatever it is. And this is how human beings think. And basically, if you believe it or not, but the aliens were basically coming and showing us, hey, don't kill each other. How about we just turn off your nukes? How about that? We turn off your weapons. And they did not come and eat us and dominate us and enslave us like, a human mind would think. Like I just say like the white man did to the natives here in the United States. I guess in most of the world. They came and they had a different idea. A different idea. And there's this beautiful scene from the documentary. I believe it was in Zimbabwe. There was a school, like a bunch of school children. Basically, they're out running around in Zimbabwe at recess one day, and a ship landed like on the edge, their playing field. And out came a couple of little men and spoke to the children through telepathy. And again, I'm not asking you to believe this, but this is what all the kids said. They said, we looked into their eyes, and the alien said, you're harming the planet. Your technology is harming the planet. Be nice to your planet. Be kind to your planet. And so again, whether you believe it or not, we'll send. And they interviewed all these people. They had a Harvard psychologist go and interview the kids a couple days after it happened. It was really brilliantly done. But just how touched, these children were. They didn't make, all of them didn't just communally make up this story together. But they said that the aliens came to tell us to be kind to our planet. Be kind to your planet. And again, whether you saw this in a documentary, if you do watch it and see it as science fiction or whatever, what I liked was just this shift in identity that, the aliens weren't coming to dominate. Again, that's how humans think. We're going to dominate. Trump is going to dominate Biden. Biden's going to dominate Trump. We're going to dominate the Chinese. The Chinese are going to dominate us. Can we let go of these ideals and say, well, what's really important? Can we be kind to our planet? What a beautiful message. What a beautiful message, you know, that was brought forward. Can you be kind to your planet? You aren't coming wielding swords. One of the greatest stories of UFOs, it happened, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. Commander Fravor, I think it was his name. He's a U.S. naval pilot, and he's like a Top Gun pilot, a man of great integrity. And he chased a couple of these UFOs, a UFO off the coast of San Diego. And, he had his fighter jet. And of course, the U.S. military is it's like, let's go intercept this thing. Let's, we need to go maybe shoot this thing down or whatever. And again, this is how man thinks. With the UFO, it had far superior technology. It wasn't here to shoot us down. It wasn't here to kill us. Just here to show us, oh, there's a different way. There's more to life than what you know. More to life than what you know. I'll even make it a little bit more fun tonight. I was on a retreat once, and I was doing a walking meditation around this temple out at Taramandala. And out in the sky were three, like moving, breathing orbs that we saw, and we watched them for like an hour and a half. And it was like a ship of some sort. And again, the point here is, I don't need you to believe me, is what happened is I was expecting to see a flying saucer, like that's what a UFO looks like in theory. But what I saw was something that was morphing and growing and changing shape. It was like a shape shifting thing. And again, if I just looked at my consciousness, even if it wasn't a UFO, I sat there and I noticed my mind, my ego, trying to put this thing in a box. Like a flying ship, an airplane, a helicopter, whatever, it has a shape. That's what things have from our world. They have a consistent shape. And what I, along with, like 10 other retreat participants, and it was really fun because there's about 50 of us that ended up seeing it. There were a bunch of hunters down the road who were hanging out looking at it, and then a bunch of hippies, worked at the retreat center, and then a bunch of retreat participants and volunteers. And none of us knew what to do with what we were looking at. And see that this is what begins to happen when you start to walk into the realm of non-dual awakening, is you have to let go of that normal rational mind. So you can forget everything I said about UFOs and aliens and all that tonight, but I just want you to hear this one thing, that in order to step into this state, you have to be willing to put all preconceived ideas down about what you are and about what is possible. What you are and what is possible. We're speaking about waking up to the hugeness of God, the hugeness of life, all realms, all beings, all existence, all levels. So much is possible. And again, we're not at the top of the food chain. There's far more superior beings. And, if you have an ego that focuses on perfectionism, if you have an ego that focuses on, I'm not good enough, if you have an ego that focuses on, I'm right, you're wrong, Trump is the best, he's the worst, those types of thoughts, those types of emotional reactions, if that's taking up all your bandwidth, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to open into something greater. If we're going to open into something greater, we have to be humble. Humble. Another word for humble is just ridiculously open. I'm even going to use this therapeutic term, stupid open. So one of my gifts is I've always been kind of stupid open. Just like, I'm just going to open with my heart, with the fullness of my body, and see what's here. See what's here. When I was quite young, I realized, whether I'm reading something in a history book, whether I'm doing a mathematical equation, whether I'm, studying science, this and that, all that stuff is just, kind of like words and logic that's put together and it paints a reality, but it doesn't mean that's the truth. Doesn't mean that's the truth. 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 plus 1 equals 1. Equals 1. 1. That's the truth. That's the truth. What you read in a history book, that's just what some person wrote. Just a story. If you could go back and in that moment, you'd experience it much differently than what you read. So we give far too much weight to our human logic. Far too much weight. And if you want to open to something greater, you have to at least temporarily surrender the logical mind. Not saying, be completely irrational and foolish, but just to surrender the overlay of the logical mind. To surrender that. The beautiful thing about the Alien movie, I have to go back to it one more time. I just loved this movie. is they interviewed, it happened in the United States and Montana, as far as like the nukes being deactivated. It happened in Great Britain, and then it happened in Russia and USSR. All three different, missile stations all had the same experience. So it wasn't just like one guy. I didn't see, so, these beings came one night and they were teaching humanity a lesson. Put your guns down. Put your guns down. There's another way to live besides what they call it back in the 80s, mutually assured destruction. And I was a kid in the 80s. I grew up, we had those drills and we go down like to the bunker in the school. It's terrifying. Terrifying to live with that as an overlay. We're just going to nuke each other to death. Terrifying. And how illuminating it is just to have a different idea. Different idea. To put it down. To put it down. So, anyways, thanks everyone for humoring me. A couple questions here I better get on to. Um, and you see, it just makes me smile. Open to the masters and then speak about aliens. Yeah, getting childlike glee for the character Craig Holliday here. Hi, Craig. My question is about belief systems. When do they get in the way? When are they useful? What types are the most useful? Thanks. Kyle, yeah, I encourage you to throw out every belief system. And I want you just to imagine, what if you didn't have any belief system, but you had a direct connection to wisdom? To wisdom. So wisdom is alive. It's active. It's not static. A belief system is static. It's frozen in time. And belief systems, basically every belief system you have is a veil. A veil. And so, now of course, there are some belief systems that are more psychologically healthy and supportive than others. You know, um, I had a student once who he just hated himself so much. He kept calling himself pathetic constantly. I was like, geez, dude, that's no way to talk to yourself. Don't call yourself pathetic, because it's like, it's like you're whipping yourself. Uh, when you call yourself pathetic, basically you stick a knife in your solar plexus and then you take it down into the hara and you just start bleeding energy out all over the place. And so, like if you had the belief system, I'm a child of God, you're going to feel lighter in your being. If you have the belief system, I am a sinner, I'm damned to hell, you're going to bleed energy. Again, if you have the belief system, I'm a child of God, it kind of, helps lighten your being, psychologically healthy. But if begin to open to this question, am I a child of God? And you open to the wisdom of that. You feel into the tenderness, the humility of your being, the gentle presence of innocence and aliveness. Now we're in the realm of wisdom. And so, when we live in the realm of wisdom, it's similar, but much better, much greater than having a really healthy belief systems. So I hope that makes sense. Um, so just back to your question, the most, what types are the most useful? So healthy belief systems are the most, ones that are inclusive, that are loving, that are compassionate, that acknowledge your strength, that acknowledge your divinity. But again, if a belief system is not rooted in direct experience, then it's just a step. Then it can be a stepping stone. It'll be a stepping stone into something greater. It can be. If you have negative belief systems, it's a stepping stone. They're just stepping stones into depression, or to speak in energetic terms, when you have negative belief systems, it's basically like putting holes in your aura, putting holes in your chakras, and you bleed energy. And then it's just hard to, how should I say this, progress on the path. Okay. Um, Here's a question from Lisa. Hi, Craig. I can't connect with anything that sounds rigid or by any chance dogmatic. I have friends that I love and respect, um, who are immersed in fear of God, and the only way is this way or that way. And it sounds so strange and full of fear and division. I just find peace in silence and spaciousness. Many words that had meaning in the past just feel totally empty. Paradoxically, I feel complete in the emptiness. Um, it's weird, but I feel this is the way to truth. Thanks. Yeah, Lisa, that's how it works. Eventually, you'll find that all dogma, like the experience Paul had, he was a dogmatic guy, enforcer of the rules and laws, and then through conversion, you don't care about rules and laws and rituals anymore. You don't care about, belief systems. You let it all go, and the direct experience of the truth flows through you. The direct experience flows through you. And so, in theory, uh, healthy belief systems are simply mental, rational reflections of your divinity, of your divinity. And so, like right now, I think I think I heard this today. I could be wrong, but in 9 days, we'll figure out who the president is for the next 4 years, in theory. In theory. Um, and so the reason I say in theory is I've heard so much political nonsense online that people are saying Trump won't leave office, or he's going to take it to the Supreme Court or whatever. But let's not go there. Um, it's just there's just so much craziness out there, and so a great question in this political age is: are your politics in alignment with your heart, with your truth? So, do you have Tucker Carlson's politics? Do you have Don Lemon's politics and his ideas, his belief systems? Or do you have wisdom as flowing from your heart and showing you how to vote, how to vote, how to act? In theory, right speech doesn't come from an ethical code that you have. Right speech comes from the direct experience of wisdom. Of wisdom. And even though my teacher's teacher, Hilda, was incredibly sweet being, she was so sweet, so tender, great healer. But sometimes she said, sometimes I have to give someone a kick in the shin. And that was the wisdom coming forward from her. Is sometimes she had to give someone a kick in the shin, and that doesn't sound sweet. Not a literal kick in the shin, but a wake up call. Be real truthful and honest with them and say, you're being a jerk. You're being a jerk. If that comes from a place of truth and wisdom, then it's therapeutic and it's helpful, even if the person doesn't know it in the moment. My teacher David called me an idiot so many times, and I would get angry at times. And then, I'd walk away sometimes 30 seconds later and say, yeah, I know. I was being an idiot. I was holding on. I was being foolish. Uh, so, anyways, uh, so thanks, Lisa, for sharing. Uh, Here's from Wesley wrote, St. Paul, for in him, in parentheses, God, we live and move and have our being. For in him we live and move and have our being. Boy, see, that's, St. Paul speaking about the direct experience of wisdom. Keep in mind, it's not your wisdom. It's not an egoic wisdom. It's not Craig's wisdom. Anything good I have came from my teachers. It came from through grace. For in him we live and move and have our being. Boy, is that beautiful. Thanks, Wes, for sharing that. Jacob wrote that he was feeling intense energy and chills. Then Richard responded, agreed. The absolute fiery intensity bringing the masters tonight. So grateful for their presence. Yeah. Yeah, so grateful. And see, this is the right attitude, is to be grateful. To be grateful when something wonderful comes. And so we want to keep that door open. So one of the ways we keep the doors open is through gratitude. Here's a question from Colleen. Hi, Craig. Listening today to your talk about this being an evolutionary world and how what comes isn't bad or good, but just growth. Can you speak more on this? Yeah, I mean, I think it, I think it says it right there that so we were all given this human mind, and in the human mind, it has a moralistic slash judgmental mind that looks out at life and is always trying to think or trying to judge, is this just or unjust? Is this good or is this bad? Is this right or wrong? And this is something that came about through humans first living in tribes. And so when you stand back from your egoic nature, you begin to see that so much of your mind is simply programming, like these lenses that you look out at life and you see, like with a politics right now, we're trying to find what's just, what is right, what is wrong. There's either the Democratic way or there's the Republican way. Those are your two choices. That's how human minds think. It's either right or it's wrong. It's good or it's bad. But when you step back, you look at this world, even from a place of pure science, you just see, oh no, this whole world is simply about growth. It's simply evolution. Whether you're a scientific materialist or someone who follows Sri Aurobindo, you see this world, it's growing, it's evolving at an enormous pace. All plants, all animals, fungi, human beings, whatever, everything is growing and is evolving constantly. You couldn't even stop it. Even if you resist like crazy, you will still evolve. You'll still evolve. And there's a freedom, there's a different kind of freedom that can awaken when you let go of life is good or life is bad. Because it frees up all this mental, emotional energy. It frees up the energy of being the victim. Because when you have the idea, say, good or bad, and if you're suffering, the natural thought is, if I'm suffering, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Like I'll tell a funny story this morning. 8 a.m. I went and did some jujitsu, and basically I got the crap kicked out of me for an hour and a half. Got beat up pretty bad, and I think last month or 2 months ago I hurt, one side of the rib cage. Today I hurt the other side of the rib cage. I'm in enormous pain right now. I'm in a ridiculous amount of pain, but because I don't look at it as good or bad, right and wrong, or like this guy, can't remember the fellow's name who I was wrestling. Anyways, he hurt me, and I could say, well, that's bad, and he's wrong, and I'm a victim, and poor me, and this isn't fair. And God, I'm trying to do your work, and here you're hurting me, and then why are you doing this to me? But I don't think in those terms. I look at my relationship with jujitsu as growth. It's growth. My question is, can I be free while I'm being choked out? That seems like a really silly question, doesn't it? Well, I'm in immense pain. Can I be free? When I'm in an intensely stressful situation, can I push the limits of my body to be free when experiencing great pain? Uh, what really it's about too is there's an aspect of me that I've been repressing for the past 4 or 5 years, is I have a real warrior in me. And when I was with my teacher David and I could really serve him, part of my warriorness could come out because it just came out in all this action that I was doing for him. And in the last 5 years or so, I felt this warrior and I've just repressed him. And he's wanted to come out a little more. And so it was part of my growth to start training with jujitsu again and just honoring this side of my psyche. Now, if I look at through the lens of the ego, good and bad, I would just say, gosh, this hurts. I'm too old for this. One of my friends, he called me an old man the other day on the mat. And so if I look through the lens of good and bad, or what feels good, what feels bad, I'd say, yeah, jujitsu feels bad. I don't want to do this. But this is a world of growth, and there's something calling me into this. So I'm saying, yes, I'm going to explore this. See, when you explore your growth, there's freedom in it. It also helps the self to fall away. The egoic self, the fight or flight response, helps different aspects of the ego fall away when you're willing to explore growth. And so a great non-dual practice is to explore your growth, explore your growing edge. Open up that door of good and bad, right and wrong, and investigate that whole program within you. And I'm not telling you to play out the aspects of your shadow. I'm not saying that. But to investigate this idea of good or bad, investigate it, this judgment, this idea. See how much of your behavior is in alignment with, I just do what makes me feel good. So I eat lots of cake, whatever it is. Okay, I better hurry up. A lot of questions here. Here's one from Hannah. Hi, Craig. My question is, how can we heal family relationships? Through patience and through love. Through patience and love. One of the things that happens when we are a victim in our family, when we're suffering in our family, when we're struggling in our family, we tend to kind of hunker down in our ego, we guard, and then we kind of do these little jabs. And, so like we throw little zingers to mom or dad or sister or brother, or passive aggressive, kind of BS stuff. But we don't listen to each other. So if we want to heal, so healing starts with listening. And so the first thing you must be willing to listen to is your own pain. So there's this idea that we have in our culture. If mommy hurt me or daddy hurt me, or sister or brother hurt me, I need them to come apologize to me, and then I need them to improve, and then I need to love them the way I'm demanding them to love me. And God actually wires our families, our friends, our relationships so that they will fail, so they will let you down literally. The reason being, again, going back to that question before, of this is a world of growth, is the only way you will learn about your own ability to unconditionally love yourself and that you are worthy of love is if you do the loving. You love you. The only way you learn about unconditional strength is if everyone abandons you and you're isolated and ignored and everyone lets you down. So every relationship you have will fail. And it's good to know this. It's good to know this. I don't mean it'll end in complete disaster, but like your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your partner, they will never love you fully and completely the way you want to be loved in every single moment. They're not supposed to be able to do that. Because if they do that, then they have the power and you become powerless and then you become addicted to them. And that's the whole codependency dance. And God wants you to be a master. So Richard asked about masters tonight. God wants you to be a master. And a master loves himself fully and completely. A master is like a power generator. The reason they're a power generator is because they're not bleeding. They're not they're not bleeding energetically. So when you're in relationship, so if you're in relationship with me, you demand that I'm perfect and I let you down, which I will. If you demand I'm perfect and I let you down, and you sit there and you feel sorry for yourself, and you just, sitting there kind of pouting, demanding that Craig Holliday is perfect, you become powerless, and then you have to wait for Craig to be perfect, and you'll be waiting a long time. What God wants is you to realize Craig is not perfect, but there's enough love within you to love the little child within you who's suffering, who feels isolated, who feels alone, feels hurt. And so when you embrace that child and meet her with an absolute love, you discover your unconditionally loving nature. Also, when you embrace that child and meet her with love and do it consistently, you you get in touch with your unconditional strength. When you embrace that child and say, child, you are so worthy of love, absolute love. The child wakes up and becomes the innocent essence of awareness. These are all non dual qualities. And so, through you loving yourself fully, you wake up. And then the beautiful thing, Hannah, about when you wake up, you naturally forgive your family. Now, if they're abusive, you can forgive them with boundaries. So you forgive them, but then keep boundaries so you don't hurt yourself anymore. Um, I hope that makes sense. So, whenever I think of healing in relationship, it comes down to you loving you first. When you love yourself fully and completely first, and then you need to go have like a serious talk with your wife or husband or partner or whatever. When you love you first and you feel secure in your own love and safe within your own heart and strong within your own being, you show up in a way that is less demanding. And you can speak your truth, you can listen to the other, and then you can grow and heal in a much more efficient way. Most families try to show up with, three or four or five inner childs all showing up, crying, arguing, and poking each other. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. We need someone to be an adult. We need someone to be the master in the room. I wish, that, our parents could just love us fully and then that would take care of it, but that's not how God designs it. God designs it so that you become empowered first. Okay. David Fay writes, Craig, we love aliens. One time I woke up and an alien was sitting on top of me. It was so cute. That's from the net. Thanks to that. Thanks for making me smile. Here's a question from David. Hi, Craig. I have a question. I've been practicing Qigong and along with my meditation practice, and I am curious when I need to have discipline to follow the practice and get it right, dial it in, etc., and when to relax and allow something to move through. Um, when does the doing of practice get in the way of being that is inherently there? Sometimes it seems so strange to do something to be here. Yeah, I value being, David, over doing. And so the first thing I do, if I'm going to start a practice, is I just start with being. And so I open in my heart, I relax my breath, I get in touch with my being nature. And then I let the being do the doing. If my mind is doing the doing, um, then it feels like I'm doing my taxes, you know. And so I'm going to encourage you to get completely out of the way and just let the being do the practice. And if you do it wrong, that's okay. Because all practices, if it's a true practice, it's simply a trick to get you into being. It's a trick to get you into being. Now, I will say this, if you're doing a real complicated, strategic surgical practice, like say, for example, shadow work or Qigong, and you're trying to open up one particular center or something, yeah, learn the practice. Spend a little time learning the practice, but hold it lightly. Hold it lightly. Prioritize being over doing. And then, if there is going to be any doing, I like the word gentle discipline. It's gentle. It's gentle. It's fluid. It's a gentle discipline. When I first meditated, I was so rigid. I was rigid for years. And I had to do all this work to let go of my rigidity. And so it's a gentle discipline, gentle practice. So being first, comes first. Um, Getting it right, dialing it in. I would relax all that. One of the things that uh, so I'll tell a story about Hilda. So Hilda sat my teacher David down one night, and they were sitting on a couch, but it was a couch that had like a sheet over it. They probably had a cat in the house or something. And so there's a sheet over the couch. And if you ever put a sheet on a couch, the sheet always gets all kind of jumbled up, because it's not really like the right thing to put on a couch. It's not sewn in. And so if you ever put a sheet on a couch, it just gets all messy and everything. So she sat David down. She said, David, I'm going to teach you the secret of yoga. David got all excited. He's like, oh my God, the secret of yoga. I really want to hear this. And she just took her hand and just gently smoothed the wrinkles out of the sheet. She said, this is the secret of yoga. Smooth. Just smooth, like when you rest in your being, you're smooth. There's a gentle discipline. It's not like getting out an iron and an ironing board. It's not great effort. It's just like, it's just smooth. Just smooth. So we're not being lazy, but just like gentle effort. Smooth. Smooth. So, anyways, beautiful question, David. Okay, a couple more, and I'll see if I cut you all loose. Let's see. Dear Craig, your presence has a joy and a kindness beyond understanding. It doesn't seem afflicted by turmoil. A transparent and lasting smile. It's so strange I had to ask if you know where this beautiful happiness and unfathomable strength comes from. Is it your awakening or just a true understanding and letting go of ego? It's truly inspiring. Um, I think you answered the question here. So where does happiness come from? It comes from God's grace. It comes from opening your heart. And of course, if you're going to be happy, you have to let go. You have to let go of ego. And when you're in ego, you're in a divided state of mind. It's a divided, you know, way of being. To me, it feels like hell. And so if I ever experience division, I try to let go of it as quickly as possible. That keeps you, like she writes here, to see to seem unafflicted by turmoil. You can't focus too much on turmoil. You can't focus too much on turmoil. I think that's more of a compliment that than a question, but thank you. Anything that has come to me has come through God's grace, and it's simply through being open. Through being open. Craig, oftentimes you write, you ask, can you meet this with love? Could you speak more about what that means, Emil? Yeah, this is a good question. So, this is going back to say practice. It's a practice I often invite. Just ask, can you meet this with love? And basically, it means, can you stop, let go of your thoughts or your story, and just breathe more deeply into this moment? Can you breathe more deeply into your experience of pain? Can you breathe more deeply and give yourself permission to feel that which you're struggling with, that which you're suffering with? And when we love something, we're connecting to it. So I often ask this question, can you meet this with love? Pointing at some place within you that you're in pain. So if you have heartache, if you have sadness, if you have anger toward mom or dad or sister, brother, if you're suffering, can you meet the inner child within you with love? Can you breathe, feel, open, connect to the place within you that's in pain? As you do this, the emotion begins to release, the resistance releases, the pain unravels. And so to meet something with love means you have to be courageous enough to feel that which you don't want to feel. The reason I ask, can you meet it with love, is often because the person's avoiding it. Or they're just kind of resisting it or fighting it. Can you meet it with love? Can you drop into it and embrace it with your breath? If that's hard for you, if we could be a good Buddhist and we could acknowledge there's space here. There's space here that's holding my pain. That's another way of meeting it with love in kind of an impersonal way, is acknowledging the space that's around your pain. And when you do that, the pain just starts to unravel into the spaciousness and empty out of you. You begin to experience the inherent empty nature of pain. You could be a good Christian or good, say, follower of Sri Aurobindo and call upon God, call upon grace to come into the pain, to hold it, to embrace it. If you're feeling like you don't have it in you, to embrace it. And so when we call upon God, again, we're acknowledging the presence of God, that God is greater than the pain, God is bigger than the pain. God has plenty of love for this pain. Plenty of love. So when we are in pain, oftentimes we are in a deficient state of being. Like the ego tells us there's not enough. The pain's greater than the love. And so I'm asking you to step out of a deficient way of being and step into this abundant nature. Saying, oh yeah, the love is greater than this. So you might have to walk through the doorway of faith or trust or openness, or just be a good Buddhist and do the direct experience thing where you directly notice, oh, if there's pain in my heart, there's space around my heart. And therefore, the space that's here, which is quiet and silent and gentle, is big enough to receive this pain, to help it unravel and empty out. It's a great question, Emil. Okay. Did I do it? I did it. Thank you all for your patience tonight. Thank you all for your support, your donations. And I'm going to ask this for this week's inquiry. I'm going to invite you to call upon one of the masters and start to develop a relationship and see what comes. See what comes. So you play with this, just to open your heart, open your body, your mind, develop this relationship with God, and see what comes. See what comes. So, anyways, good night, everyone. So nice to see you. Thanks for sharing your hearts with me. Bye for now.